How's it going, guys? My name's Chris. Why is rent so high in Australia? Today we're going to find out. We're watching this compilation from Aussie Rants, just TikToks and whatnot. Let's get
absolutely
into it.
Insane, Calgary, is that the apartment I had literally exactly 1 year ago is up $900 in rent. $900 from the same apartment. Please someone explain that to me. Insane.
If you're going to buy a rental property and you're not capable of compassion, don't buy a rental property. How is a disabled single mother of three supposed to buy a house in 2 months just because you want more rent? There's a fucking rental crisis. People with jobs and money are having to camp in parks and live in their car. I pay my rent. I look after this house.
The Australian dream is dead.
Yeah, it's a tough situation, right? Obviously, like, a lot of landlords are greedy people, but that's the way it is. It's supply and demand. Like, there's way too many people in this country and not enough houses, and not enough houses being built, to be honest. And yeah, like, even if you're, a really good tenant, take care of your house, it's sometimes not enough. Landlords just want more and more money. And obviously, interest rates going up, like, you can't expect landlords to be just taking loss after loss. Like, if, the interest rate went up, like, 0.25% or whatever, you're looking at, like, an increase of, couple $1,000s a year. So that's going to be passed on to the tenant. But, however, now we're seeing rates get cut. Are we going to see rent prices go down? No. So landlords are now going to be pocketing that extra increase. Should rents, stay stagnant? They should, but they're not going to. They're going to keep going up. So at that same token, like, is that a fair, justification that, because rates have gone up, rents have to go up? Not really, because when rates go down, rents don't come down. So
The unit I rented as a broke fucking uni student for $550 a week, split between me and my best friend, for a 2-bedroom, 2-bathroom, 2-car park building in the city. Didn't have great amenities, doesn't matter, I'm a uni student. And it was just a nice place to live with my best friend during uni. And I was a broke fucking uni student who worked casual, and I could afford that apartment. Now, that exact same apartment is $850 a week. And it's no longer furnished, so you're literally paying more for less. As a full-time worker who also works a second casual job on the weekends, I cannot afford the same apartment I had as a broke uni student 3-4 years ago.
Young professional.
yeah, but you can't afford it by yourself. But if you had that friend, I'm sure you could afford, what was it, $850? I'm sure you could afford $425 a week as a full-time worker with a casual job. Yes, it's a lot of money, but you should be able to afford that. But then again, $800 for a 2-bedroom apartment, that's crazy. Like, it should be $600 at most. But, that increase has come out of nowhere, really. And it's just, it literally just comes down to, landlords have increased the rates, and they're not going to come down because their costs have gone down. They're going to be pocketing that extra money. Such is life, and that's the real problem with Australia. Like, once you get stuck in that rental system, it's really hard to get out of it and buy your own house. Like, to be honest, a lot of people should be moving back in with their parents or whatever, just so they can save up enough for a deposit to get out of the rental rat race. But a lot of people won't make that sacrifice, so they're going to be stuck renting pretty much their whole life, because it's not realistic to be able to rent and save for a house deposit when rent is $800 a week. It's just, you have to be making like $200,000 a year. It's
in
crazy.
Toronto can't afford to live here anymore. Those making $60,000 to even $120,000 say they'll likely have to leave. A person would need to be making over $200,000 per year to be able to afford an average home in the city. For many young people in Toronto, most of their money goes to survival and not much else. The average prices of...
See, that's the problem. It's not any worse or any better in other Western civilizations, right? Like, Canada's the same. America's probably a little bit better. However, you have, guns and crappy healthcare. So you got to take the good with the bad. Like, Australia's pretty crap in terms of that, but at least we have good healthcare-ish. At least there's no war, no violence is relatively good, except for youth crime at the moment. Going through a bit of a problem with that. And, like, other than that, like, it's a crappy spot we're in, but it's not. It can be a lot worse, you know.
Common food items have doubled or even tripled in the last 2 decades. Not to mention gas has even more than doubled in price in Toronto in that time. The reality is Canadians and especially people in Toronto are spending more on essentials. As prices have risen, income has not. It's why experts say many will be or have already been forced to leave.
I can't afford my rent and to enjoy my life at the same time. And I think it's pretty fucked.
My friends are homeless, they're couch surfing.
Oh, we had an increase of $100 weekly.
I was relieved that it was only 12%, and that is just crazy.
Here in town hall today at a rent rally to ask people why they're here and what they would like to see change.
So my landlord, they've already paid off their mortgage. They're not actually facing any increased interest rates, but they just decided, oh, well, the property market says that I can increase your rent, and what are you going to do?
I got evicted for no grounds a couple of years ago, and it took me 2 months between getting kicked out of that house and finding a new one.
I was contacted yesterday by someone who is going to be thrown out of their home on 1 day's notice.
I think the government should impose rent freezes. In fact, they should impose caps on rents.
End the tax concessions for wealthy landlords, a freeze on rental prices.
Yeah. Get the government to come sort out all your problems is, a good way to put us into a socialist society, which is arguably worse than the capitalist society we're in. Yeah, capitalism has its flaws, but socialism, it disincentivizes people actually trying to get ahead and, be better than the average. And a lot of people just want that. They just want to be, average and whatnot, and that's good for them. But a lot of people, they work extra hard and they shouldn't be punished for that. But yes, housing is, it's a necessity and people should be able to afford it. And maybe that just means you have to live with roommates, like $800 a week, for a 2-bedroom, 2-bath. If you both have partners, split that, so 2 partners in that apartment, so that's 4 people. That's $200 a week. If you can't afford $200 a week, then you need to get a better job. You need to work more hours. You need to get a job. Like, I'm pretty sure on Centrelink you could afford that. So it's not really an excuse.
You can see how much rents have increased beyond just the consumer price inflation. So it's clearly a choice, I think, by property developers and the rich to take advantage of this situation.
The fact that you have to choose between filling up your car and buying vegetables is pretty confronting.
I'm 35 years old. I'm sleeping on a mattress on the floor at my friend's place because it's impossible to get a rental or it's way too expensive. And my only options are sleep in my car, sleep on the floor at my friend's house, or try and find a room in a share house if I can afford it, if there's any available. Knowing my luck, I'll end up with some fucking weirdos. How are those my only options? How are those the only options of many Australians right now? Before anyone says, you're 35, why don't you own a house? I did own a house in my 20s. I owned a house with my ex for 6 years. We bought it a good time in 2012. Then we split. He paid me out. It wasn't enough to then go and buy another property. So I think I'm just going to have to start applying for rentals, like 1-bedroom apartments. I don't mind living in a tiny 1-bedroom apartment. But having to pay $500 a week is fucked. I earn an average wage, but I can't afford that.
If you're planning to move to Australia.
So your average wage is, so the average wage is like 90 grand a year now. So 90 grand a year is probably about, you're probably looking at 1,200 to 1,300. So you should be on, 30% of that should be going towards housing of, 1,200 is about $400. So yeah, it's not ideal, for sure. It's not ideal, but at least there is that possibility of getting into a place. It just means you take money out of your discretionary income or you work an extra job. And I can relate that a lot of people, minimum wage is not 90 grand a year, right? Obviously, a lot of people are probably earning around 60,000. And in that case, you have to share a place with someone. 2 people earning 60,000 is 120k a year. Like you're both earning, $1,000-ish after tax. You can afford that $800 a week place, right?
Yeah, I believe it's important for you to know that Australia is in the middle of housing and cost of living crisis. I don't usually talk about this because it's really stressful, but I think it's important for you to know and consider this before you make any decision. The cost of goods are going up because of inflation. But what's hurting the most is the endless interest rate hikes. Whether you're paying a mortgage or rent, the interest rates went so high that people are paying more than $1,000 a month on their mortgage repayments or their rent. At the start of 2022, we were paying $3,600 a month, and now we're close to paying
$1,000 a month is small, right? Like an $800,000 mortgage. So consider like the median house in Sydney is over $1 million or just about $1 million, whatever it is. Sorry, an $800,000 house, right? An $800,000 mortgage is over $1,000 a week in repayments. So $4,000 a month. That's a lot of money. So it is easy to say like, save up enough money to get a down payment on a house. But unless you're a dual income household or you make $200k a year, the likelihood of you being able to afford a house is pretty low. You're probably, you got to buy quite a small house or a unit to be affordable for most people, which in many countries that's the standard living is in an apartment or whatever. But in Australia, we're pretty lucky in the sense that the standard is a house, and it's going in the direction that it's not going to be the standard for very long because it's just becoming that unaffordable.
$1,000 each month on our mortgage repayments. And there's a lot of us who are on the same boat. Even landlords are unable to keep up, that they need to increase their rental fees. Hearing stories of people who are now paying $300 more a week on their rent. $300 a week, that's $1,200 a month. God. Whilst some people are able to manage this crisis, some are unable to and are forced out of their property. I don't mean to stress or scare you. I'm just telling you the current situation. So before you go here, please do your research and secure your accommodation if you can. If you can stay with a friend or a family member, that would be good because it's very hard to find a rental property, especially near the city, and it's very expensive. I hope you like this content and I hope you're not confused.
$21 an hour working 40 hours a week.
This woman says she gets paid $21 an hour and she still cannot afford to live in Ontario. That's pretty sad. And that's pretty much anywhere you go in GTA right now. You have to live literally somewhere in some farmland 2.5 hours from Toronto to maybe get a basement apartment to live. Recently, I saw a post that said Canada is the second best country to live in. Yeah, tell this girl that. We need to make Canada affordable again. And now winter is coming. And oof, if more people get kicked out of their houses and shelters are going to be full, it's going to be a fucking nightmare. The government won't do shit. I guess one solution is to learn French, and they're a little cheaper right now. So I'm coming to rent your apartment.
I'm nearly 27 years old, and today I am moving back in with my parents. This is not the plan I had for 27-year-old me, but that is just how bad the rental crisis is at the moment. I've been living on my own for the last 3 years. When I first started living on my own, I was paying $280 a week in rent. It was actually kind of fine to pay rent on my own, and I've never had like an outstanding salary. The reason why I'm moving back in with my parents is because my landlord wanted to increase my rent now to $450 a week. Now I live in a small 1-bedroom apartment in an old building. It's nothing flash. Sure, I live in a good suburb. I live in Malvern. I'm probably just paying for location, but I have to pay to do my laundry. There's cracks in the walls. Like, it's nothing flashy. Like, it's not worth $450 a week. That's like $2,000 a month. What are people supposed to do? I'm so lucky and I'm so grateful that I can move back in with my parents, but not everyone can do that. So what's your alternative? Like, you're homeless? The thing that really grinds my gears is, and I am 99% sure that my landlord does not have a mortgage on this place, so that can't even be an excuse for landlords on here. She's owned this place since about 1980, and I know for a fact she has 2 investment properties. So she's just making money off what she can from the market. And I was like, there is no way I can afford this. And I have been an outstanding tenant, like outstanding. Rent's never been late. My inspections are always absolutely spotless. I've never caused any issues. And this is why my generation can't get ahead, why we can't buy houses. Like, I've been paying $20,000 a year in rent. But if I went to go get a house loan, they wouldn't see that as, oh, she can pay $20,000 a year. No, I have no savings because of how much I've been paying in rent and bills. That's why my parents were like, move home, save that money and try and get ahead. I'm so grateful. I love my family, and I don't have any issues moving back home with them. I do have an issue with the fact that they live over the other side of Geelong, and I'm still going to be travelling to Melbourne for work. So that's going to be so much fun. But what do people do? I'm so lucky.
Yeah, at the end of the day, it's sacrificing something. But, $200 a week in rent is not, $200 a week in rent is $10,000 a year. So she actually is not spending $20,000 a year in rent. So I don't know how she got that number. Also, where's the rest of your money going? Like, if you're working full time, like, maybe you need to cut down on that coffee that you drink. No, I'm just kidding. Cutting down coffees isn't going to, save you that much money to be able to buy a house. But like, you got to be looking at your budget. Like, where are you wasting money? If, the average salary is $90K and you're spending $20K, let's say, even though it was really only $10K on rent, like, where's your other $80K, maybe $20K to tax, and then you're still left with about $60. There's no way you're spending $60,000 on food, fuel, holidays. Like, you must be eating out a lot, buying a lot of clothes. Like there's something going on there. Because, if you're 27, so you moved out at 24, what were you doing for the last, the first 6 years of your, adult life? Did you not save any money during that time? And that's what really grinds my gears. Like, people that are a little bit older than me, like, I'm 24, so people that are like 30-ish, like, they have no savings. Like, what have you been doing? Like, you need to work more if you can't afford your current lifestyle and without, like, and not saving, then you need to work more. That's the simple, income minus expenses, and then fucking you got savings. That's as simple
I
as
have such
that.
a great family that I can move back in with. But what's the alternative? Homelessness? Like, the government really needs to get on top of this because, honestly, the state of the rental market at the moment is absolutely fucked.
This is so true. The wage is so much better over here for like most jobs. My partner's on being really good. Kind of can't talk about utility.
Going to off Australia, so the figures I am going to give are based off what I've experienced here in Sydney, but I do have mates that live in Melbourne who live in Perth, and they have said that rent prices are much of a muchness. They are somewhat cheaper in those two cities compared to Sydney, but there might be $50, $75 in the price. So living in Sydney, I would personally say, do not expect to pay anything less than $300 a week. And if you were to find anything at $300 a week, I think it would be an absolute miracle. As I would say, most rent prices vary somewhere between $375 a week to about $500 a week. Now, obviously, there's things that are more expensive, up towards $600, $700 a week, but most people would not be paying that here. You can find things in around $400, $450. I'm currently paying $400 a week right now, and in my new place I'm moving into tomorrow, I will be paying $425 a week. So it is very, very expensive. It's a lot of money, but the only thing I would say is that wages here are considerably higher than home, so it sort of evens itself out in a way. You're getting paid more, so you pay more, but that would probably be my estimate in average rent prices. Maybe in Melbourne you might pay $250 a week, and that is each, by the way. That is not for an entire apartment, that is each. So if there's 3 people in the house, you're paying $300 a week each. That's $900. So just keep that in mind. If I'm wrong, feel free.
Okay, that makes a bit more sense. I was going to say $400 a week. That sounds pretty good. But if it's $400 each, $800 or $1,200 a week, that's a lot of money. So yeah, at the end of the day, yeah, if you're young, you got to sort of share those costs around. Is it fair? No. Is it what you need to do to get ahead? Yes. And eventually when you get into your own house, you can then sort of rent out your rooms if you need to, like house hack in a sense, and that can give you extra income to pay off your mortgage even faster. I think a lot of people need to stop complaining about how unfair the system is and look at how the system works and see how people have gotten ahead who are in better situations to them, and just, copy that sort of formula and get on with life. It's not going to change overnight. The government's not going to come in and solve your problems. There's no point in just talking about it. You just got to
Correct me, but that is what I've discovered since living here.
Australia's housing crisis continues to worsen. According to the ABC, a person or couple would need to earn an amount of $175,440 per year to afford the median house in Brisbane. Sydney, which now according to Forbes is the second most unaffordable city in the world, requires $238,000 to buy the median home. Keep in mind that these figures behind me are after tax and based on a home loan deposit of 20%. ABS figures state the mean income of all working Australians is just under $75,000 a year. That figure is without tax, meaning the average Aussie couple cannot afford the average home in a capital city that's not Hobart or Darwin. And even Hobart's a bit of a stretch. Sure, they could buy a home below that average, but there's a few problems with that. Firstly, that includes homes that are so cheap because they are straight up unlivable. Secondly, a majority of these homes are in areas with few amenities and poor public transport. Sure, the average Aussie couple could afford a home in Schofields, a suburb in Sydney's northwest, but with that would require a 2-hour return trip commute to the CBD and back. The CBD, of course, is the place where the job's paying $75,000 a year are. As often repeated by the people directly causing the problem, maybe if these people can't afford to live in the city, they should move to the country where there's plenty of houses in their price range. Sure, they can...
I wouldn't say the country's it's cheaper, yeah, but it's not any better, really.
What with their current job in the city, but what is someone with a business degree going to do for work in Wagga, let alone Cobar? So you've overcome that hurdle and you found a nice place within your budget. Have you saved up enough for a deposit? No? Why? Because you can't save that amount in a reasonable time when you're paying off someone else's home loan.
By show of hands, who else is looking for a rental right now? Me.
Yeah, it's a tough situation, but yeah, I don't know. You've just gotta move in at home. I think save up as much as you can and get out of there. But people aren't willing to take that sacrifice for a year or two. Let's say you're paying $800 a week in rent, and then you move back home. You're saving that $800 a week straight away. Maybe you pay your parents $100, $200, whatever. But yeah, if you haven't moved out of home yet, I would not recommend doing that. I would recommend staying there as long as you can and save up as much as you can and avoid renting at all costs. Just go straight from living at home to buying your own place, probably. Just understand that you need a good buffer when you do that, because shit goes wrong in a house, and it's expensive to fix. So you definitely don't want to go all in. So yeah. Anyway, this video is getting a bit long, so I'll cut it here. And I'll post a part 2. It'll be commented below when it's posted, and I'll see you guys there.